Wednesday, July 18th to order. Starting off with preliminary matters, under 1A, request for continuances, postponements, withdrawals, or addition of ex-agenda items. I do want to announce that item 3A, which is 308 Santa Monica Avenue, Santa Monica Way, has been continued indefinitely. It's been determined that it actually needs a coastal development permit, so staff will be working on a revised staff report and a public notice. And so if you received a public notice for this hearing for today, you will receive an additional one to let you know of the new date. And I don't have any other requests for continuances or postponements. Under announcements and appeals, I want to announce my decision that pursuant to Government Code Section 6585 2.2 and the corresponding Santa Barbara Municipal Code Section 28.44.110, that I'm going to announce my decision for a coastal development permit for a detached accessory dwelling unit for a property located at 1207 Del Mar Avenue. I was able to make the findings as outlined in the staff report and approve the project subject to the conditions of approval that were outlined in the staff report, with an additional condition that the existing gate that's in the area of the proposed uncovered parking space be removed. And if it were to be relocated on site, it would need to meet the provisions of the city's fence height ordinance. It's just as it is located right now, it blocks the two proposed parking spaces. So with that additional condition, I announce that I've approved the project. The next item on the agenda is comments from members of the public pertaining to items not on today's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on the agenda? Seeing no one, I'll go to the consent items. The first one is a request for a one-year time extension of a tentative subdivision map for a property that's located at 500 to 510 State Street. I reviewed the staff report that was included in my packet, and I agree that the project continues to be in conformance with the city's zoning and building ordinances and also with the policies of our general plan. Therefore, I could make the finding and approve the one-year time extension. The map will now expire on May 14th, 2019, and my action, the project's still subject to the original conditions of approval. The next item under consent is an application for a one-year time extension for a tentative subdivision map and a modification for a project located at 1236 San Andreas Street. Again, I've read the information in my staff report, and I agree with staff that the project continues to be in conformance with the city's zoning and building ordinances, as well as the city's general plan. So I can make that finding. And the new expiration date will be July 22nd, 2019. And again, this action is subject to the original conditions of approval contained in the staff report. And then the last time extension is a request for a 2-year time extension for a tentative subdivision map for a property located at 1424 Salinas Place. Again, the project continues to be in conformance with our zoning ordinance and our building ordinance, as well as the city's adopted general plan. Therefore, I could make that finding and approve the 2-year time extension. So the new expiration date will be September 14th, 2020. And this request is subject to the original conditions of approval contained in that resolution. So now we'll go to item 3, which is the projects. And as I announced at the beginning, item A, which is 308 Santa Monica Way, the item has been continued indefinitely. So we will go to item 3B, which is 1232 Chapala Street. If the applicant would like to come up and staff to the table. Is the applicant not here? Okay, what we can do is I will go to the second item. She's not here either. Oh. 1732. Yeah, 1732. Yeah. That's okay. Trying to think if both items I have questions of them. What we can do is there's two things. I can have you start your staff presentation and see if they show up, but your presentation is only going to be a couple minutes, right? And then, yeah, why don't I take a recess for 10 minutes, and we'll try to contact the applicant. So I'm taking a recess for 10 minutes since the applicant's not here. Thanks. Okay, so I'll reconvene the meeting. We are on item 3B, an application at 1232 Chapala Street. If staff would like to give the staff presentation.
Good morning. So we are here discussing a front setback and an open yard modification to allow the construction of a new 4-car garage, attached accessory space, and a 4th unit on top of this new proposed garage. The 7,500 square foot RMH zoned lot is outlined here in pink, and the setbacks are in yellow. And it's currently developed with a triplex and a 3-car garage that is shown here that is non-conforming to 2 interior setbacks. The proposed project includes demolition of the existing garage, construction of a new 4-car garage pointing towards a private alley instead of Chapala Street, construction of attached laundry facilities, mechanical room, and storage space, and then this staircase here would lead up to a 4th unit on top of the garage. This project would also legalize an as-built trash enclosure right here, and includes site work such as hedge trimming and removing the existing curb cut along Chapala Street here, so that it would become sidewalk and parkway, consistent with the rest of the street. The existing triplex is a designated structure of merit, and as such, the project was reviewed by the Historic Landmarks Commission. The HLC reviewed the project 4 times with favorable comments, and they gave favorable comments for both the open yard design and the proposed front setback encroachment. This project is under the Average Unit Size Density Program, AUD for short, and it is applicable because it exceeds the base density of the lot, which is 3 units for a lot of this size. The proposed density would be 23.23 dwelling units per acre. Allowable is 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre. The average unit size of these 4 units would be 565 square feet, and 965 square feet is allowable. The proposed garage and accessory space, outlined here in blue, would encroach into the front setback, shown in yellow, approximately 4 feet 3 inches into the required 10-foot front setback. Staff is supportive of this encroachment due to the reconfiguration to allow cars to back out onto the private alley instead of Chapala, which is preferred by transportation staff. Removal of the existing curb cut to allow an additional on-street parking space on Chapala. The proposed garage providing conforming parking for all 4 units. And the encroachment being necessary to meet the parking design guidelines and still respecting the interior setback at the rear of the lot. So speaking of the interior setback, normally a 6-foot interior setback is required. However, in this lot's case, a 3-foot setback for covered parking is applicable due to the lot being zoned RMH and the use being multi-unit residential. The unit atop the garage would respect the 6-foot interior setback for the residential development. In regards to the open yard, there's a diagram down here, and the common open yard, the existing open yard for the existing triplex is non-conforming. When the triplex was originally constructed, there were no open yard requirements, either common or private. Regardless, based on current standards, the existing triplex is conforming to common open yard requirements, but does not meet the requirements for private open yards because they aren't individually screened and sectioned off. The project proposes to reduce the existing non-conforming open yard area from 1,541 square feet to 901.5 square feet, and those areas are highlighted in green. But when we take into consideration areas that don't meet the minimum dimensions, just outlined in green, the reduction would go from 2,172 square feet to 1,532 square feet, which would then be conforming for the requirement of 1,125. The modification requests includes continuing to not provide private open yard spaces for the existing triplex, and would have conforming open yard for the 4th unit on top with a private deck. So staff is supportive of the proposed open yard configuration due to the proposed unit having conforming private open yard When waiving the dimension requirements, the proposed common open yard would exceed the requirement by 36%. The Historic Landmarks Commission specifically noted that providing screened private open yards for the existing triplex would be inappropriate for the neighborhood. The proposed accessory spaces include laundry facilities and storage, which are both appropriate amenities for a multi-residential project. And transportation staff has confirmed that the proposed garage could move no closer to the existing no closer to the existing alley without needing any kind of design waiver. So this private alley, there is a 16-foot easement starting here and goes to the telephone pole. So it's 16 feet, but the alley itself is 20 feet 5 inches wide. So that last 4 feet 5 inches is not part of the easement that this property has access to. And so there's a condition of approval saying that before the project goes for any kind of project design approval or final approval from the design review boards, either the applicant's going to work with transportation staff to get the maneuverability to work within that 16-foot easement and the driveway. Perhaps these accessory spaces need to shrink and the garage needs to move closer to the triplex. However, the condition does state that the open yard would not be reduced any further than what we are seeing today. And it also gives the option of the applicant working with the neighboring property over here, which is a condominium complex, to expand that easement to be the entire width of that driveway. In regards to CEQA, the project requires an environmental finding, noting that it qualifies for an exemption under CEQA under categorical exemption 15183, and a standard condition of approval related to the unlikely discovery of archaeological artifacts is recommended based on archaeological reports for the area. And staff has received 2 emails about the proposed modification related to street parking concerns, but has received no letters, phone calls, or visitors from the public wishing to comment other than what we have here today.
Okay, great, thanks. I don't have any comments, questions for you right now. If you'd like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments.
Craig Schallenberger, architect, applicant, and I have Dan Heckman, the owner of the property, here as well. I don't have anything further to add with regard to the easement at this time. I will do the verification that you mentioned, and like you said before, final PDA. We'll close that loop. I don't have anything further to add. It's self-explanatory at this point, I think.
Okay. I would like a little more explanation regarding the open yard area, since that's one of the mods you're asking for. And the finding as outlined in the staff report is that the modification is consistent with the purposes and intent of the zoning ordinance. And then that's the main one, and then there's 4 sub-ones for secure and appropriate improvement on a lot or prevent a reasonable hardship due to physical characteristics of the site, result in development that is generally consistent with existing patterns of development in the neighborhood, or construct housing development containing affordable residential units. And when I look at the purpose of the open yard in our code, it says open yard areas are intended to promote desirable living conditions, a sense of openness on residential development, and to provide minimal useful space for outdoor living and enjoyment. And so when I went out to the site, in terms of outdoor areas used, this is the area that is most usable, and it becomes even more important when the existing triplex has no private outdoor area, and so you're proposing to encroach into that open yard area with parking is required. I understand this is a nice amenity. These existing units don't have laundry facilities right now, so it's not really a necessary type of improvement. It is desirable, but not necessary. A water heater that may be able to be on demand, and this could be maybe relocated. So kind of explain the thought regarding the open yard area, how it's going to work, and how, in your opinion, it is consistent with this provision stating the purpose of the open yard area.
Sure. So as you can see in the, may I use a pointer? You can see in the way that these units work, This front unit here toward Islay is essentially that front yard is its yard, and it uses that basically exclusively. And similarly, the existing unit here toward the back, it was using the large area, but that it isn't and wasn't very accessible to the other units anyway. So any encroachment on that would only really affect the one unit here. The governing reason for the location of the building now was to keep this as far away from the alleyway for not only maneuverability, but just setbacks from adjoining properties. So we've brought it to the minimum 15 feet separation required by building code. So that distance was essentially determined by keeping this building away from the alley. As far as how that affects the yard, like I say, it really only affects this unit, and it's still fairly generous. The new unit has 2 private decks that I think will be most, if not all, frankly, of the outdoor enjoyment for that tenant, leaving, like I say, still a fairly generous area for this yard here. In terms of not screening them and trying to obtain some openness, that is in keeping with the neighborhood character. And as Stephanie mentioned, the HLC was supportive of that. You just don't see that in that neighborhood, and it would, I think, be a blight on the neighborhood to have that type of fencing and screening. It just would be out of character. These areas are also, they're technically in the setback, so they're not allowed to be called private open space, but it's very usable. This is actually a nice garden area for this unit here, and I understand that it doesn't fall into the location requirements on the site, but this is actually a healthy, generous yard here for this unit here, and the adjoining area as well. Like I say, this Islay unit really uses that as its front yard, and this tenant uses this area here. So in totality on the site, it's a very open and accessible to all of the tenants and all of the residents, and especially with the new decks for the new upper unit here, which is actually shown on the floor plans on the next sheet. But I think we're able to provide some communal, but also some private spaces at the same time with this design.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. I agree with the carving up of the area for private areas. That's not appropriate. My comment was just the overall size of the common area.
Right. I would also want to comment on you had asked about a question about, you're absolutely right, and we've already are considering this in our building department submittal to change this room or eliminate it entirely, whatever we need to do. But we will have an on-demand water heater, and the furnace will actually go up in the attic of this unit here. So although this unit and the garages here are in desperate need of some storage space, we are showing the bikes in the garage that works that way, but it would be very desirable to the property to have some storage space. There's really none as it exists now. So we would like to try to keep this as much as possible.
And then what drove the width? This is what, 8 feet or so, 8 or 9 feet? Was it just the fact that your minimum is 15, so you would just filled in this area with something, or could this be reduced so that there is more open area between the 2 buildings?
Potentially, except that it's just some maneuverability within the rooms themselves. I mean, you can see after the door is open, you're only left with a couple of feet between the laundry equipment. Once anything else is put in there, hampers or any kind of those types of amenities, it's a very small space as it is. But that was more driven by maneuverability within the space.
Okay, then.
Sorry, one other thing. We did study potentially talking to the building department. This is actually just a a staircase structure here. The actual wall of the building is here. We talked about approaching the building department about moving this 15 feet and getting a determination from them that the 15 feet starts at this wall. Excuse me. And I think they would be supportive. However, that would further encroach onto that open yard space, which is why we left it where it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. All right, great, thank you. Right, I don't have any other further comments or questions at this time. I'd like to open the public hearing. I have received 3 requests to speak forms. Typically what we do is we have them sit in this chair and they speak into that mic, so if you can let them. The first one is Marshall Thomas, if you'd like to come up. And can you turn on the mic? And Crystal, do you have a copy of the 2 emails that we received? Great, thank you. I've read them, but I just want to make sure. All right, anytime you're ready.
Yeah. Excuse me, my name is Marshall Thomas, and my partner, Sharon Granoff, are the owners, occupants of the property right next door, 29 West Islay Street. So first, I'd like a little clarification because one of the zoning exemptions, it talks about a hedge along the eastern interior property.
You need to speak into the mic.
Oh, sorry.
It's movable if you want to move it. It makes it more
Okay, is that
comfortable for
better?
you. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So on one part here, it refers to us as being on the north, and then over here it talks about a hedge on the eastern side. So I just kind of wanted to clarify, are we east or north of this property?
You're east.
Yeah, okay.
Your reference north.
Yeah, I mean,
true
it's
east, right?
kind of northeast a little bit.
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to clarify what. Okay.
Head they're talking about? You can just, we'll respond later. So you want to know which hedge they're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So because the hedge is on our property, and it keeps coming up as something part of this project, and I kind of wonder what that. Anyway, aside from that, so I'd just like to talk a little bit about the intent of the AUD, and that is to create more housing, more spaces, or whatever. And I have this unit was purchased by this. These are all my opinions, but by this person, by the owner, almost 2 years ago now. And as far as I can tell, they really haven't had any real renters in that time. I see people coming and going. I see what looks like vacation rental happening to me, different cars there. The interior is decorated. I see people with suitcases coming and going. So I have some concerns that the intent of this AUD is to convert it to vacation rental when it's approved. So I don't want that. I would ask if there's some way to prevent that if this project is approved. Some of the neighbors would have the similar comments. So it seems odd to me. I don't understand if the true intent was to provide housing. It seems like there would have been renters in there this time. It's just anyway. As far as the open space goes, can I? So this. I'm sorry, it's upside down here. Okay, so I'll turn this so you can hear me a little bit better. I mean, the open space between our property and theirs is really just, it's not usable space. I mean, it's there. And, you're going to have 4 units using this interior space. I mean, this area and this area, I suppose they could be considered usable. Right now it's just rock and walkway. I mean, I guess you could put a chair out there and call it a usable space. And I mean, to me as it is, I don't know if I would sit out there, but again, that's just my opinion. So it seems like you're making a permanent change here, and this whole area is going to be for these 3 units, which, the door to this one, These two are both head out this way. I think there's another door over here. It's a little unclear to me what the exact interior setup. I've never been inside of it. But anyway, that's a comment on that. I would also like to say that there's a kind of a concern with the driveway. I just want to this is just my own little very simple drawing, if you want to look at it here.
We'll put it here so the TV
Oh,
can see it
okay.
too. Yeah.
So on that alley, there are probably at least 25 cars that come in. I don't say every single day, but that alley services condominiums and 4 other houses up to, including ours. So there's a lot of in and out traffic, and because of the angle of the one coming in, pretty much everybody turns in the right-hand side and goes out. Well, depends on which way you're going, but as the arrows indicate. So I have some concerns that if this is going to be the ingress to the east, that people coming here and people going, you're having kind of 2 directions of traffic on the same side, and this is going to be, 10 feet? So that's just a concern that, and with the pole here, I don't see quite how this is, are they going to turn this way? Are they going to go around this way, around the pole? I don't know, and already people have backed into that pole several times, and also the fence along the condominium has been backed into, not by anybody here, but it's just, this is a very narrow, sort of in this space, even though it shows it to be 20 feet, is really only 15 feet between the property line and the curb over there. So we have some concerns about traffic pattern there and coming and going out of a narrow, because right now we have a lot of, it's wider, so it's easier to turn out of here, but anyway. And as far as the modifications from the street, there are a few places on the street that are probably within the 6 feet. I would say most of them are 10 feet at least, so it's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's totally out of character. It's slightly not as common as, the places being farther away. So, I mean, for us, of course, it'd be a big change because we're right there all the time. I would just like also to, speaking to the intent and the fact that this project was started apparently without permits, because according to the modification of the triplex, because according to the city, there are some issues with failure to pull permits and stuff. So another thing I'd like to just indicate is this is a photo of the side yard that I was saying wasn't very useful, but also during the hot weather now we have discovered that, air conditioning was installed there, which I looked up and I don't see any permits for that. So not only do we notice the noise now, but I'm just kind of wondering, that speaks to me again about the intent to convert the AUD to just because there's been some inconsistencies with what I would consider the applicant being a contractor would be aware of the fact of what needs to be done. So
I saw those units too and was going to discuss it during the section.
yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say for that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Do you want those, or should I just take them back?
We can keep them if it's
Okay.
okay, since it's part of the public hearing.
Sure. Yeah, I have copies. So
Okay, great, thank you.
thank you.
The next speaker is Sarah Flynn, followed by Sandra Kievman. Am I close? Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
My name is Sarah Flynn, and I live in the condominium complex at 1720 Chapala. I have a disability, and I use my back door for loading and unloading when I get, the disability van drops me off. And I also walk my service dogs down that driveway. I've lived in the complex for 21 years, and what I've noticed is a really high volume of traffic coming from not just the condominium residents, but it's a multi-family units in there as well, and I believe some vacation rentals. Walking, it's a safety issue with this garage that they're proposing. And if I don't even see how it can happen where it would, disrupt the flow of traffic. And I've also observed that, their intent to make it for residential, I haven't really seen into any permanent people there. I've seen a lot of different people come in and out. So I suspect it's also being used as a vacation rental. So I just wanted to, voice my concerns about the driveway.
Okay,
Okay?
great, thank you. The last speaker is Sandra Kiebman, if she'd like to come up. Good morning.
Good morning. Is this
It's
fine?
on, yeah.
My name's Sandra Kievman. I live at 1720 Chapala Street, Unit 1, which is on the opposite side of the driveway where this proposed project is going to be. Our building, is a 11-unit condominium, and I'm secretary of the Homeowners Association, and I'm speaking for other owners and residents in the building. I'm not opposed to what they want to do. I think the project that they have on the corner is beautiful, and it's an asset as far as appearance goes. Haven't met anyone who lives there, but I think it's okay. I'm very concerned about the driveway. All of our units, which is our 11 units, we all have one car. Down the driveway that we share with the people on the other side of the driveway, there's a total of 23 cars that go up and down. So it's hard to tell exactly who lives there because some of them are rentals, vacation rentals, but a lot of them are either owner or renter occupied. Some of them are multi-family units that have multiple cars. And so we also have blind people who live in our building, and they walk in the driveway, and they have assistants who stop in the driveway to pick them up. There are children who play in the driveway. The residents I call it an alley. It really looks like an alley to me. But they drive pretty fast, and it's already kind of unsafe. But some of our residents unload their groceries in the back doors. There's an ingress and an egress to the driveway, which has already been discussed, and it's divided by a large power pole, which is right next to my unit. It's in the middle of the driveway, but my unit is closest to it. People have backed into, as a previous speaker said, backed into the pole. Someone has damaged our fence by backing into the fence from that property, from that driveway. I'm sure there's no other reason for it to have been damaged. I didn't see it, so I didn't report it, but I can only assume that that's where it came from. Also, the visibility if we have to go out our ingress, there's zero visibility coming out of that driveway. So if we're impaired, if we have people backing into the egress and we have to only use our ingress because they're backing into our egress, I don't know how that's going to work. I'm concerned about the safety issue. If somebody hits that power pole, and it's not just a telephone pole, it is a power pole, and it will hit my unit, and I just want to be safe. So those are my concerns.
Okay, great, thank you. Those were all the request to speak forms I have. Was there anybody else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 1732 Chapala? See no one. I would like to note that I received two emails from neighbors. One was from Jonathan Rodriguez, and he expressed concerns regarding parking. He thought that this would be a bad idea for parking and requested parking permits on the street. And then the second one was from Kevin Brown, who, again, says he's a huge proponent of increasing housing density in downtown Santa Barbara and would support projects like these, but have concerns about street parking. And the rest of the email has to do with parking on Chapala in the surrounding area. So I'll close the public hearing. Did you get these forwarded to you, the emails?
I did, thank you.
Close the public hearing. So there was a couple items that were brought up in the public hearing part that I would like both staff and the applicant to respond to. First was just clarifying the location of the hedges and what is proposed with the hedges. I did notice on the site visit the existing hedge along the front, and the site plan indicated it's 4 feet. It was actually taller than me, so is it proposed to be trimmed down to 4 feet? And then regarding the interior fence.
Yes, so we are more than happy to trim the hedges to the ordinance required heights. I'll just note that the gentleman that lives on 29 West Islay is here, so that effectively deals with this very tall hedge. I think it's up to 14 feet at some point, 12 feet, give or take. We want to leave that to ensure the privacy between the two properties. There is no desire to touch these hedges in any way. Out at the street front, again, we'll put them whatever height they need to be, or we'll leave them whatever is desired between the city and the neighbors. Whatever the desire is, the applicant is more than happy to accommodate in terms of hedges.
Okay. All right. And then additionally, if this hedge is on a neighbor's property, you have no intent of going on their property and trimming it without their permission?
We have no desire to touch the hedge at all.
All right. Okay, and the second one is regarding the intent of the property and the use of the property of ADU versus vacation rentals. It's not included in the staff's proposed conditions of approval, but it would be if any approval were to be granted for the project. There is a condition of approval that prohibits the ADUs to be used as vacation rentals. And if you're in the belief that it is used as vacation rentals, you can file a complaint with the city in the documentation, and the city will follow up on that. We have an active enforcement personnel that goes out and researches AUDs. So that's two methods. But if this project were to receive approval either by myself or a design review board, that is a condition that's placed on there, because the intent of the AUD ordinance is for rental housing and workforce housing and to provide housing, not for vacation rental type uses. Also, a standard condition for AUDs is that they submit an annual survey that gives information regarding the tenants and that kind of thing. So that will follow through with that side. Then in regards to asking applicant and then staff too, regarding the comments that were made regarding the use of the existing alley or driveway in regards to your easement, and then also with staff in regards to transportation, any comments they may have, the preferability of backing out on an alley versus public street. So first, if
Sure.
Craig, you want to go
I'd like to first clarify the reasoning behind the location of the garage doors, or the direction they face, in other words. As it is now, this garage faces Chapala Street, and all these, really, it's a dilapidated building. It's a terrible-looking building. But beyond that, it's not desirable from the design review standards to have garages facing the street. It's much more preferable to have a more aesthetically pleasing facade facing the street. So that was the entire reasoning in the orientation of this building onto the site where it is. And then as far as maneuverability, we worked with transportation. I wish we actually had the transparent radius that you can show the maneuvering of the vehicles and their ability to get in and out here. It works, essentially. This vehicle here is able to back out and turn and get out. There's a little bit of a complex turning radius diagram that transportation uses and that we use in our design to determine whether it would even work maneuverability-wise, but it does. We've studied that. As far as ingress and egress, I agree. Of course, we agree that that's how this is used. It's not mandated that it's used that way. These just happen to be there because of an unfortunate location by the utility of this power pole and never having undergrounded that utility. The power lines actually go across Chapala Street and should have, in my opinion, at some point been placed underground, opening this entire alleyway up and removing this unfortunate obstacle. That said, so Chapala is a one-way street going in this direction. So true, cars come in here and go out there. But it wouldn't necessarily have to be that way. If this approach didn't exist, this alleyway would be served by an ingress-egress, and there would be a coordination that is required between drivers coming and going. Luckily, one good thing about this area is there is very good lines of sight. There is some low plantings here, some hedges here that are low to the ground, but vehicles have a very generous line of sight across to see oncoming cars coming in or out. And like I said, the vehicles on this property are able to make their maneuverability without even really addressing the quote-unquote ingress side of this configuration here. All of that said, we would be willing to increase the width of this approach and essentially cut off this little bit of landscaping and make this a more generous approach here. We've only done that because that's where the property line aligns. But if we need to, and if it'll help the neighborhood, more than willing to increase that and further increase the maneuverability.
The existing curb cut,
Is way over here.
so it's a big one.
Yeah,
So-
you can see the garage now, and that's the point. These cars have to back all the way out now to get out onto Chapala Street. My opinion, the proposed configuration is much more desirable to that path of vehicle travel.
And then, so, trying to judge, so about this much is going to be new curb area.
New sidewalk from here to here, or a parkway, I should say. Well, and to that point, that'll be increased landscaping or street plantings here at that parkway.
Okay. So when you were pointing, you were showing that it appears, and I don't know if you're just doing it visually or not, that the majority of the maneuverability would occur on their side. They wouldn't come out, or that was just you're discussing in terms of the template. How far
Right.
out did the?
Yeah, well, if this car here were to come back to here, it's able to then make its turn. All of the vehicles, this one can just stay within the entire, as it backs out. This one can too, this one can too. This one has to go and sort of make a more sharp turn, but it's still maneuverable. It still works.
So in terms of potential conflicts with the existing area, a majority of the maneuverability would occur on the project site.
Correct. And again, there's very good lines of sight from this building corner. There's just an openness between the alleyway and this car backing out. As soon as the vehicle gets out of the garage, sort of halfway in, halfway out, he's got line of sight out of his side windows to the entire alleyway. It opens up almost immediately in backing out of that garage. And then, like I say, it's still maneuverable to get out of that on the property.
Okay, great. And staff, did you have anything else to add in terms of transportation and backing out in public street versus?
No, just transportation staff did say that backing out onto the alley as opposed to the street is preferable, and they were also preferring this configuration because it would add an additional parking space on the street.
Okay.
Oh, right. I hadn't even thought of that.
Okay, great, thank
So
you.
space here.
Okay, I think that was the response. Is there anything else that you wanted to respond to, Steph?
In regards to the emails that we received, they were talking about increasing the residential parking permit program. And so I do have some handouts for anybody who would like to take one. They go over the process for either expanding an existing residential parking permit area. The closest in this area would be Area D, and it would need to be moved up 2 blocks to encompass this block. Or likely a new parking permit area could be pursued, but it's largely resident driven and it involves resident petitions and going to city council to allow parking resources to conduct a parking study to confirm that the area is impacted not by residential uses but by commercial uses, industrial uses, just non-residential uses. But there are handouts available in the back if anybody would like one.
Great, thank you. You might want to move your mic up so they can hear.
Oh, slipped.
Yeah. All right, so I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site and review the neighborhood in regards to this proposed development. And like I said, I did see this air conditioning unit, so I was going to ask about it too, that it requires a permit. It's in this area here, so it appears it's outside of the setback, but we do have noise standards and such, so it needs to receive a building permit. So in regards to the requested modifications, I'll deal with the front setback modification first. When reviewing front setback modifications, in the hierarchy of the setback modifications, they're the higher one because it really impacts the neighborhood or not impacts, it has effects on the neighborhood. And so as a staff hearing officer, I look at that closely. I look at what the surrounding development patterns are. I see what the design review comments have been and to reach a conclusion. And in this case, we didn't go to the elevations. But look at the elevations of the front. Do you know offhand what page number?
3.1.
I have no idea. You lived it. Okay, so the front elevations, that's the existing house.
I think
Oh, no, there you go, right
this
there.
faces the alley and this faces the street.
Okay, so in terms of what would be seen from the streetscape, in terms of what's there now, it does represent an improvement of what's there now. I noticed particularly across the street and along this block of Chalapala Street, there is a variety of different setbacks in the area, and that also provides for interest for the streetscape. That's not all uniformly set back. Some are at the line, some are farther back, some are. So in terms of the front setback modification, that is an appropriate improvement for this block of Chapala and for the development. It's not going to have an adverse impact on the public streetscape, and it is supportable. Where I struggle is with the open yard modification request. And as in my intro, I look at what the purposes and intent is of the zoning ordinance and take into account what's the existing situation and how are you changing it. Well, the existing situation is the triplex doesn't meet the private outdoor living space, but it does meet the open yard 1,250 square foot area, and so is the proposed reduction appropriate? I look at what's remaining and then also what you're proposing, and that's why I'm questioning regarding this area, because if this area was to be removed, and I understand it's an amenity, but it's not a necessity for the AUD, it represents about around a 400, 500 square foot increase in the area that's usable. There still needs to be the stairs because you still need to access that area, but there's larger. It would be a larger usable area, and I understand the front unit uses this area in the front, and this one mainly uses this area. But Chapala, it's just the 10-foot setback, and there is, I noticed, 2 ways to get into this unit that would lend itself that,
It's on the other page there.
the next one?
No, that,
Oh, back one?
There's the triplex plan is on this sheet.
Oh, I see, okay, yeah. So it's even off the kitchen, so they could come down and use this area to eat. This is more of the main entrance area, so here. So I'm still struggling with the open yard area, the open yard modification, and even with the reduction or removal of this, it still wouldn't meet the 1,250 square feet, but it would be more area. And that's why I was discussing with you, could this area be reduced or eliminated? And I'm still struggling with that.
Well, with the elimination of the need for the mechanical room, as we studied this further, I think we could reduce it, but I don't think eliminating, especially as you mentioned, there's still the staircase, so there's still going to be that encroachment, and structurally, to build a staircase, it needs something that would encroach in that area anyway. So, I mean, I think we could reconfigure. We really need to keep some laundry facility for the complex. But I think it can be more efficient. It could be reduced.
Or stackable. They have stackable laundry now that
Yeah.
have these banks of laundry.
Sure. So that room could be reduced, and I can study that.
Okay.
I don't know what it translates to in terms of lineal footage, versus and how much wider that open yard would get. But we can increase that yard.
Okay, so if there was a condition, something to the effect of remove the mechanical area and make the laundry room the minimum necessary. I want it to be a real effort. I don't want it to come back and say, oh, yeah, we gained a foot, because that's not worth the time and the effort, and I believe it can be reduced, but I don't want to be unrealistic on the amount that it could be reduced.
Right. I mean, I think we have to keep the minimum of the staircase, so that's 3 feet, and then if we shift it over a couple of feet there, maybe like this becomes a 5-foot width type of a space that there are some minimums for maneuverability within a room.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think it's 8 now. There are dimensions on the next sheet, but
Yeah, it's 8. And the staircase is,
it's
4.
more 4, yeah.
Craig, have you considered pocket doors instead of a swinging door?
Or that's an exterior door.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, I could put the condition that this area be reduced to encroach to be no greater than 5-foot width. And then if it could be reduced this way, or in this way, you still have more dead space. I'm not sure if reducing it this way would help. It's more of getting the width.
Can we actually just flip to the next sheet,
Yeah.
though? I mean, I don't want to jump to that designing on the flies without looking what happens up above. So the other thing was that is part of there was some deck space that was gained by having that. And this is the entry to the unit here.
But this meets the private outdoor living space, this one, right?
Right.
So this one is just the added. So cutting it back, that wouldn't affect this kitchen here.
Well, yeah, that line, yeah, you're right. That line is out further. That's out here, G. So that's just a shed roof below. That's covering this portion of the laundry. So yeah, if that got cropped back. I mean, it's 8'2" now. I would suggest 6 feet would give 2 foot 2 inches of additional. By 23 is another, 50 square feet of additional open yard there. I think it's 704 in that area now. That would bump it up to over 750. Just because 6 feet gives you the width of the door plus 3 feet to maneuver inside the equipment. And then the maneuverability, it's 3 and 3 is a very standard, rational architectural layout for space planning.
Okay. 3.
Yeah.
Right, so just reduce the size of the laundry/mechanical room area. How would it, okay, yeah, to be so the laundry mechanical room, so this bump out.
Right. Can reduce that whole bump out.
Okay, I'll work on that condition. Because like I said, my concern with AUDs or with any housing development, there's a bunch of things you need to balance. And you know that as an architect, that you got to balance a lot of things. There's setbacks, there's open yards, there's rental units, there's parking, there's all this stuff. And what I just get hung up on is the fact that that is its usable space, and to keep it as usable as possible while providing the code requirements. So taking that all into account, so that it could be reduced, that'd be great.
Great.
So in regards to the required findings, there's several findings that need to be made. One, that since it's a new unit, it's the environmental finding, and that it is covered by our, or it's under 15183 is exempt. With the front setback modification, like I said, how I can get that, I'm going to make changes to the findings, so in the resolution it's going to be different. But in regards to the findings for the front setback, how I can get to the finding is with the consistency of the pattern of the development, all the stuff that I talked about earlier, and that it is an appropriate proposed setback. And then in regards to the open yard area, the finding would be, again, balancing all the different aspects of the project. And also with the front setback modification, you are confined in the areas of where you can add because of the existing development and as the two front yards. So you do have constraints that way, and you have the alleyway on the back. So that although this project is reducing the open yard area, there are several areas that do meet the requirement, like in the front, although this is shown, this area up here in the corner of Islay and Chapala is shown as being this little green area. The people who use the open yard area, they don't stop at the setback line, they use this whole area. So although technically it doesn't count towards the requirement, it is usable area for the front unit.
Right.
And these Unit A and Unit B, they need to share this area here.
Right, it's more of a communal area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the new Unit D, I'm assuming would be using that area too. So, with that reduction, it is a minor reduction, but it does separate the buildings more. I guess another way to write that condition would be that the distance between the stairway and this be a minimum of 17 feet, correct? Mm-hmm. That would be another way to write it.
Sure. The potential conditions of approval, there's just the one, there's two that staff recommended, like Stephanie had suggested or had explained the archaeological resources and then regarding the access easement. Mm-hmm. I would be putting additional conditions on the project, one being that a permit be sought for the air conditioning unit or the units up there. The other one is regarding, like I said, the standard vacation rental unit AUD condition that we put on there, that they can't be vacation rentals. Okay. And then the AUD survey, which is just survey standard that you might have done it when you're on the board, when you've reviewed design projects that they put on. And then also another condition I'll put on the project is to work with transportation staff on the location of the curb cut, of this curb cut here, the new one, to provide, to increase the maneuverability exiting the driveway. Okay. So to make sure it is adequate. It looks narrow, but it probably meets their standard, but if it's necessary that it needs to be, you have a lot of freedom since you need to construct it anyways. Right. And then the last added condition is regarding the reduction of this laundry room to provide the 17-foot distance in that area. And that's, it's a couple feet closer to the required 20 minimum dimension. Okay. So with the changed conditions and those changed, with the changed findings, the revised findings, and the additional conditions of approval, I can approve the project. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and if you were to appeal the project, you file it here at
our offices here versus City Hall. I just want to make that clear because all the other decisions are, the appeals are filed up at City Hall so that you're not being given the runaround, but it's here at 630 Garden Street. They also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this required additional discussion before the full board, Planning Commission, they could call it up during that same 10-day appeal period, and if either of those would occur, Stephanie would contact you.
Okay,
Okay?
great.
Great, thank you. And now we'll go to the next item.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, you're done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's 324 East Valerio Street, if the applicant would like to come up. Good morning.
How are you?
Good. That's bright.
Fresh highlighters. Where'd my stick go?
Here. Anytime you're ready, yeah.
Good morning. So we are here to discuss an open yard modification to allow the reduction of the existing non-conforming open yard and for the proposed open yard to not meet the minimum dimensions for non-conforming open yard. The existing development is outlined up here in pink. The existing lot is a 6,310 square foot R2 zone lot and is developed with 2 residential units and a detached garage. The rear unit also has a front deck. The existing open yard, shown in yellow on here, measures approximately 1,518 square feet, with only 1,456 square feet meeting the minimum 10 by 10 dimensions for non-conforming open yard. The proposed project includes removing bamboo from the interior setback in the driveway along here, and then some in the center of the lot over here. Removal of an exterior staircase at the back of the front unit, this staircase here, and construction of a 290 square foot deck and patio cover, which is shown here in blue. The deck would be taller than 36 inches, so it can't be considered a designated open yard location. And this would mean that the proposed open yard would be 1,204 square feet. That would meet the minimum dimensions of 10 by 10 for non-conforming open yard, or 1,276 square feet when including areas that don't meet the minimum dimension requirement, such as right here and this little area right here that don't meet that requirement. The Architectural Board of Review reviewed the project on March 19th of this year and offered supportive comments for the project, specifically saying the trellis and deck encroachment are acceptable as proposed as an enhancement of usable open yard. During the site visit, staff did note that the garage was not available for parking, which is a zoning violation, so there is a condition of approval in the staff report noting that the items would be removed from the garage to make it available for parking. Staff is supportive of the proposed decrease in open yard due to the reduction being relatively minor in terms of functionality. When waiving the dimension requirement, the square footage requirement is actually met, and the deck would be respecting the required setbacks, and because of that, there are no privacy impacts anticipated. The interior setback is more than double on this side from the adjacent neighbor to the deck. And also this project would provide an appropriate amenity for the front unit that the rear unit already has, in that the rear unit already has its own deck, and now the front unit would have its own deck. In terms of CEQA, the project is exempt from CEQA under categorical exemptions 15301 and 15305. A standard condition of approval related to the unlikely discovery of archaeological resources is included in the staff report based on archaeological reports in the neighborhood. And finally, staff has received no inquiries about the project from the public via emails, calls, letters, or people coming into the counter.
Okay. I need you to explain to me more the non-conforming open yard area in terms of our code talks about areas you can include, areas you can't include, like you said. And I'm just wondering why this area here is included in the non-conforming open yard versus coming out here more. Because this meets the 10.
And there is a very large tree that is right here, which,
You can state your name for the record.
okay. I'm Brooke Van Dyne with Sherry and Associates Architects. So there's a very large tree right here, so it can't really come out this way so much. Over here on this side of the house, just the way that the house is built with the driveway here and then coming around the corner, it's just sort of an odd layout. And with the grading, as she mentioned, the deck would be higher than 36. While you're coming in at ground level back here with the grading in the backyard is what makes it so high for, a single-story residence. It's just an unusual lot.
Okay. Well, my question actually, Stephanie, if you want to take a stab at it, it's just regarding the location of the non-conforming open yard areas. Since this is 12 feet, I was just curious on why, these little slivers are included instead of saying, this is part of the non-conforming open yard area.
We could count that area. I believe what happened is there's a gate right here, and so we were going off of the gate. But technically, yes, we could count this area right here.
Because this area is more usable. I know there's a tree and all that, but this area, on paper is more usable than little slivers areas. Okay, then the other question I have, so what staff's proposing is a reduction of or requesting that I approve is a reduction in the non-conforming open yard area versus an encroachment into the non-conforming open yard area?
Correct. We didn't want to include the deck as a location of designated non-conforming open yard because A, it's going to be covered by the patio cover, and also because it's too tall.
But it will be usable?
Well, it will be usable as functional outdoor space, just technically doesn't meet the height or non-covered requirements. So we didn't want to include it. So yes, the request is the areas outlined in yellow, plus this area here that we just talked about, would be the now non-conforming open yard.
Okay, so at a later date, if they wanted to come in and add this as a building addition, they've already got a reduction in their non-conforming open yard area, so they wouldn't need another mod?
Technically, yes.
Okay, so the better approach would be to have an encroachment into the non-conforming open yard to keep that area open?
Okay.
Maybe?
Okay.
Okay. Would you like to do any other comments for it?
No other comments?
Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 324 East Valerio? No? So no one? I'll close the public. Or did we receive any letters or emails? No. I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site, and similar to the project before, they were requesting open yard modification, and what's the usability of the area, and what are you proposing in that area? And in this instance, I have photos. In this instance, the existing front unit is set far back from the front of the street. Mm-hmm. I don't have any front photos in here. Did you submit photos?
Let's see if I've got some. I think these are all of the backyard as well. Let's see if I've got one from the front. Yes. So this is the front of the property. There you go.
Yeah. So as this shows here, that it's. I know the deck is for the front unit, but there is a large setback area greater than what is required from the front street. So there is a large open area here. And in regards to the back, the rear unit is kind of squashed in there, kind of an afterthought with the garage and the unit in here. And so this is the larger usable area for the rear unit and the existing front unit in that it's more private from the front unit. However, what you're proposing to do is to propose more outdoor usable amenities. It's not a structure. It's, as the floor plan indicates, it has a barbecue and seating area, so it's for the outdoor enjoyment. So it is consistent with the provisions of what the open yard envisions in that area. My concern would be granting a modification to reduce the nonconforming yard even further. That is a concern because the whole purpose of having it being open and usable. And so my take on this is what I'd be more inclined to approve is to allow this encroachment into the open yard area. Our code allows for a 36-inch encroachment into the open yard area. And this one, this deck, it appears to be given the, I don't actually see it called out anywhere specifically, but when I look at the elevations, at maximum of 4 feet above grade, is that correct? Do you know how tall, because it does?
So here is the deck and with the grading in the back.
So from this area, it's, that'd be 2.5 from this side. And then from this is the driveway side here, it's 4 feet, so it varies.
Yes, and I've got some pictures that kind of demonstrate in that backyard with the grading how it does this continual step down over towards the side of the driveway. So right now, that space isn't, they don't feel very usable. You can see the downward grade there. They want a more flat, aesthetically pleasing, functional space with the barbecue and whatnot in the back.
This is a good picture because here it shows the grade difference. So the purpose of your proposed deck is to provide an outdoor area at the level of the finished floor.
Correct.
So yeah, this is a good thing so that it comes out, and so it is an appropriate extension of the outdoor living space. So it's between, so the average height is 2.5 to 4 feet. Okay. All right. So then the other question I noticed when I went out to the site is this existing gravel driveway. Our municipal code requires it to be hard surfaced driveway. Okay. And I don't know at what time it was changed to gravel driveway. The first part of it in front of the fence is asphalt. It's all broken up. And then at some time, this bamboo hedge was put in there. But a condition that I'll put on the project is that this the driveway needs to be hard surfaced in conformance with our municipal code. And I could also recognize that transportation staff does have the authority to waive it in certain situations, so that it either needs to be hard surfaced or a waiver granted by Public Works.
Okay.
Just because it's our standard, and it's been a standard pretty certain since the 80s at least.
Okay.
So I don't know what time it was converted.
And I couldn't tell you that. It was existing when we took on this project for the clients, so I don't have any helpful insight to that. But they do want to remove the bamboo, and as you mentioned, it was too tall, it grows too fast. Their gardener can't keep up with it, so they want to replace it also with something a little bit prettier and something that just doesn't grow quite so much out of control.
Right, yeah, so this planter here, I'm going to add a condition that the planter be removed.
Yes, they're taking out all of that. When I let the client know that Stephanie mentioned that was an issue, they said, well, that's fine with us because we're planning to remove it anyway. And there's a second planter here. It kind of serves as a privacy barrier between the primary structure and then the second single-family dwelling. It's another huge bamboo, and they want to take that one down too and replace it with something, again, not quite so.
They put like a canopy tree or something that has the thing on top, because it's not real attractive either.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay, so then I can make the finding. This is an appropriate improvement. It's consistent with all the the revisions of open yards, but I will change the finding to recognize the fact that what I'm approving is an encroachment into the nonconforming open yard versus a reduction in the nonconforming open yard. So this still will be considered part of your open yard area, although it doesn't meet several of our requirements. That's why I can grant a modification. It's too tall, and it has probably the trellis part of it is more than 20%. I would assume. I didn't do the math, but just recognizing that it is still part of your usable outdoor area. And then,
Ms. Reardon?
yes, go ahead.
In the formatting of that condition, can it read something like in the building permit submittal or prior to PDA that the nonconforming open yard is all shown?
Oh, sure. I wasn't. I would. You can work. I can. If you want me to put a condition on it, I can. I was just going to state in the finding that's what I approved.
Okay. I just wanted to be really clear for the archive plans and in the future that all of this is.
Yeah.
now
I'll just
open
say
yard.
the non-conforming open yard shall be shown on the. So the non-conforming open yard shall be shown on plans for PDA and submitted for building permit. Okay, so the original conditions of approval regarding the removal of the miscellaneous items in the garage.
Okay.
Then I'm going to, the new condition that pursuant to, it's actually Municipal Code Section 30.175.090.h, the driveway shall be hard surfaced, or a waiver will need to be obtained from the Public Works Department. Then this planter removal, the planter along the east property line that encroaches into the driveway shall be removed as it hinders access to the garage. And then the other one is the archaeological protection measures. So with the change to the findings and the added conditions, I can approve the project. My action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have, the Planning Commission also has review authority over all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if either of those would occur, Stephanie would contact you.
Okay.
Okay? Great, thank you. I adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.